I'm very honored to have this possibility to us have this panel discussion with IB alumni from the school. Thank you very much for joining us in person. It really is valuable for us all for hear your stories and how the education you have gotten has influenced your path for the future. I would actually like to start our panel by you first, as I know you're pretty much known to the audience, but that if there is somebody who is not aware, for you to shortly introduce yourself. And then I would like to also ask you the question that if there would be a movie made of your life, which might be happening in the future, what are the two scenes that you would insist that must be included in that movie? And maybe we'll start here, please.
Hi, my name is Ushma. I'm a lawyer. I live between London and Bombay and now live fully in Bombay. Firstly, thank you so much to Mr. Basu and to everyone who's organized this festival for having us here. It's been 15 years since I've been on this stage and it still feels like home, so it's lovely to be back. So to answer Olli's question about the movie of my life, I think it's hard to pinpoint two specific scenes, but I think something that's shaped my life significantly is the inspiring people I've met and the support I've had from them. So I'd like to talk about the first time I encountered hardship of any kind. So till I was about 22, my life went exactly the way I planned. How could it not? I was privileged. I was educated at the best school in the city. I had a fantastic IB education. I went to university in the UK, got the job I dreamed of in London. And then 2 years after I started working in London, personal circumstances compelled me to come back to India. I was 22, 23, and I was terrified. I'd spent years studying in the UK to be a lawyer in the UK, and I had no idea how to come back home and apply that knowledge to a law practice, which is very specific in India. And the person who guided me through this process was a law firm, was a partner at the law firm I started working at in Mumbai. She was a young woman. She had 2 children. She worked full-time, 14 hours a day. And she still found the time and the energy to spend hours every week helping me navigate this transition in my career. And I would not be sitting here today if it hadn't been for her. So I think that's one person that I would definitely want included in the movie of my life. And secondly, this is very deeply personal, but the other scene that would have to be there is the birth of my son, who is the most important person in my life right now. So he would definitely have to be represented.
Hello, can you all hear me? Yes, okay. I'm Sukriti. I'm a writer. I write books and scripts for Bollywood. It's lovely to be back here because I was here for IGCSE and IB many, many years ago. And then after that, I was at the LSE studying management, which in hindsight was a really foolish decision actually. But you know, my whole family, everyone's a teacher and they really believe that no education gets wasted. And they had also spent a lot of money on that degree, so they really want to believe that no education gets wasted. So that would, I think while I was here, I spent a lot of time kind of looking outwards at the places to which I would go and where I would end up. And then at the LSE, I had this sort of moment of reckoning where I realized that I was studying management, but I didn't really want to work in the corporate world. In my very sort of naive and idealistic and foolish state, I thought that meant just being a cog in a machine. And so that would maybe be the interval point of my film, where I did all this, I went abroad, and then kind of thought about what I really want to do, and is that what it was? And then I took a gap year after the LSE, and I looked around me, and I realized that some of the most incredible changes around me were being made by storytellers. And I had always grown up in a house of books and stories, but I had never really given much importance to that. And then I saw so many examples around me of how, my family did a trip to Egypt, and what made those really old temples relevant to all of us and to tourists was the Mummy Return films. The Mummy and the Mummy Returns. And more recently, I went to Jordan, and there's this old temple of Petra, and everyone there was talking about Indiana Jones. And I just realized that these films, it's like Hollywood is a priest that's bringing people to these temples, and that's changing behavior. These storytellers are changing behavior, influencing people, and these were all the things I presumptuously wanted to do. So after I took a gap year, I then went to study creative nonfiction writing at Columbia, which involves taking research and turning it into engaging, fun stories. And then I came back to India, and I've been working here trying to tell the stories of India ever since. And that would be hopefully a sort of happy ending towards in my film, though obviously the film's not done yet. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sukriti. Then we go to pre-partners.
Okay, hi guys. So my name is Ranveer. I think a bunch of people might know me because of my YouTube channels. I go by the name of Beer Biceps. I don't drink, I'm not into bodybuilding, but it's just a catchy name. Honestly, I talk for a living. We've started India's first ever podcast that made it to the mainstream. So talking is my job, and I'm extremely nervous for the first time in my life while I'm on this stage. It's too overwhelming for me. I'm coming back to school for the first time since 2009, and that was a conscious decision. I wanted to do something with my career and life before I made my way back. I'm going to be coming here a lot more, but just today is a little overwhelming because this is the stage and the auditorium where I learned my dearest art form, which is judo, through Kawasa. I'll probably say that the two moments from my life which would be turned in, which would definitely have to be a part of that biography film. The first one would be related to judo, which is when I took part in my first tournament, being coached by sir, and I was fantastic as a judoka in school, as to win all the school competitions. But in my first inter-school competition, I finished 7th out of 7 people. And that was a reality check, and being the coach that he is, he just told me it's fine. Didn't treat me any different, just told me to work harder the next time. Eventually won all these inter-school competitions as I grew older after that. So I think that was a very big character building moment for me, which is why all this is extremely overwhelming being back here. Second moment is probably right after engineering college, when I figured I didn't want to do anything related to engineering, and instead I wanted to do YouTube. So in order to fund my YouTube dream, I began training people. I began teaching them judo and fitness and all that. I used to go to people's houses. So in between my training slots, I would have free time, but because I wanted to do something with my time, I'd go back to all my judo memories about hard work, and then go to Juhu Beach, Carter Road, and run along with like the people who are doing the cardio, and tell them, hey, I run a YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe. And instead of getting 7 subscribers every day, I upped it to about 40 or 50 on each of those jogs. So those are my 2 core memories. And I could go on and on about all the memories that I've had in this school, but just feeling a lot of gratitude right now. The only reason I'm going to stretch myself into his introduction is because he's genuinely my childhood idol. He was the first head boy we had in this school, and I would look at him giving speeches and think to myself that I wish I could talk like that one day. So, Om Dhumatkar, everybody.
Thank you, Beer Biceps. And then to Om.
I think life's tough when you're speaking after Beer Biceps. But I'll try my best. It's firstly fantastic to be here. My immense gratitude to the organizers of Festival of Hope, Mr. Basu specifically, and the entire organizing team. Mr. Heinonen, fantastic to be here. Thank you for having us. My name is Om Dhumatkar. I joined this school about 20 years ago. So when I see DAIS founded in 2003, that's a very real memory for me. I currently, and I have, as I have done for the last 18 years, lived in London, and I head up strategy for the largest commercial bank in the UK. which means that 20%, a fifth of all UK businesses, bank with us. And it's been my responsibility to make sure that those businesses survive through COVID and continue to thrive as we come out into a brave new world. So as with many things, it's a very brief trip for me. I'm here for 6 days, and I'm still keeping to my UK schedule of meals and sleep just to make sure that I get back to a decent lifestyle when I get there. It's hard to think about our life as a film just because I feel so much of it is still to be experienced. But if I were to select a couple of instances, they would certainly have to do with this school. And the frankly extraordinary story of how I ended up here. So as it happened in 2003, when the school was announced, there was an IB class of about 60 people. And for those 60 seats, there were about 450 applicants, which made DAIS in that year a tougher place to enter than Harvard Business School. And as it happened, I was fantastic and close to the top of my English entrance exam, and terrible and close to the bottom of my maths exam. So very fortunately, the headmaster was an English teacher, and so he said, I want to interview this person. And about 2 days before the interview was to take place, I was traveling on the Mumbai suburban rail network, trying to get to a math tutor who would get me certainly to a pass grade to be able to get into the school. And as it happened, I was pushed off the train as it was pulling into the station. And so this front tooth of mine is fake because it broke as we landed. Now, this presented two problems. Firstly, I was wondering how I'd be able to give my exam. Secondly, I was wondering how I'd be able to give my interview because my face was swollen. And we called and we tried to reschedule the interview. It was pushed back a day, it was pushed back 2 days, 3 days. And the third day was the last day of the interviews with no clarity on whether or not I'd be seen. At which point my late father basically insisted that I get dressed and we were going to show up to the interview venue and dress there for the interview, not knowing whether this interview will take place or not. I went in, and luckily we met the English headmaster who said, yes, we've been waiting for you. And I was able to interview and then joined the school. And it's been an absolutely life-changing experience since. So any story of this life certainly would be incomplete without being pushed off a train at Borivali station in Mumbai and then showing up with half a tooth missing to conduct an interview at DAIS.
Thank you very much for those scenes of the future movies of your lives. We'll go to another route. Let's start with Sukriti now. You have kind of devoted your life for creating and telling stories. We've heard here today about the impact of technology it creates, but we have also heard very clearly the message that it's not the technology, but it is what we value as humans. And my question to you would be that, why do you see that stories are so valuable for us as humans?
Initially, when I became a story writer, I enjoyed doing it, but I didn't really know why I was doing it. And then that changed while I was working on my first novel, which is called The Bride's Guide to Wedding Shopping in India, a Tragedy. And it's this fun, fast-paced quest for a bride who's looking for her wedding clothes. And it happened after I was looking for my wedding clothes, and I'd gone all over India trying to find things that are cheap but still look good. And while I was researching that book, and I ended up diving deep into the history of fashion in India and the history of our textiles. And I found some incredible things that I hadn't really known about us before. I found that the oldest piece of fabric discovered is a piece of printed Gujarati cloth in the old tombs of Egypt. You know, I found that the cowboys who started wearing bandanas in the US, those were tie-dyed rumals exported from us and from the Hindi word bandhana. I found that patan patola that's made in Gujarat was being absolutely craved by royalty in Indonesia and Thailand, and they would, you know, India would export these things out. We had a thriving textile trade. We were amazing, and maybe this is not news to everyone, but the kind of scale at which I read all these things, it really was news to me. I read that, you know, a large part of the Industrial Revolution in Britain came because they had to catch up with making the kind of textiles that we were making. And I realized that, oh my gosh, at one point, India was an absolute economic superpower. It was a beast. And maybe this is something every generation has to, you know, realize on its own, but that's the time when I realized it. And then I looked up, and I found that in my present time, India is an emerging country. And I think that that's as stupid as calling Shah Rukh Khan an emerging actor. You know, the dude has got an incredible body of work already. He's ruled already. And then he had a low phase, and now he's back. For me, you know, just as Shah Rukh is a re-emerging actor, India is a re-emerging country. And I didn't really put that together till I had read about our stories. You know, yeah, okay, outside India looks old and haggard, but so does Shah Rukh. And you can't take away from the fact that this guy has been an absolute, you know, force of power. So for me, I realized that unlike Shah Rukh, who has a body of films that, you know, everyone can watch, all the young people today, who is telling the stories of India? Who is recording these stories? There are lots of people out there, but I definitely wanted to be one of them. I believe that telling stories is nation building. I think telling stories is reminding people of who we are and where we've come from. And that novel really kind of gave me my purpose. I don't really care whether people read these stories, watch these stories. Sometimes it's just learning for me, but I'm going to record every single story of India that I can.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The beer biceps. You have a special talent of touching people. There is a huge amount of followers in different platforms that are kind of eagerly interested in what you're doing and what you have to say. Please tell us, what's the secret sauce of being able to create those connections?
Okay, so the raw truth is that if you want to survive and grow as an online personality, you have to cut off pieces of your soul and give it away. So it's a bit of an exchange, but in all seriousness, it's this whole cliche about how as long as you're authentic, people just relate with it, and it's very true online. I think it honestly boils down to storytelling. And I know I'm bringing this back to DAIS, but it's a core skill that I picked up here, which is communicating your innermost thoughts. And this is something you notice with, at least for me, like I've noticed it with a lot of DAIS alumni. When we meet each other, it's a lot of analytical thinking and there's no layers. And this is something that school does to you over the course of you being here and going through the process. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it's something conscious that the teachers did, but we're able to communicate some very deep thoughts. I personally feel that's a big reason for the growth. I could also say that, you know, just the technicalities of video, the technicalities of social media, all that helps. But that at the end of the day, people will follow an individual where they see a part of themselves in that individual's heart. And as long as you're just true to yourself, you will grow. And then you will be consistent, put out a lot of content, etc., and stay a little ahead of the curve. So dare to dream, learn to excel. I guess so.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much. For you, I'm very curious about knowing the kind of connection that you've been able to create and kind of work with on that connection that how is it that the kind of ancient Indian philosophy and banking in the London city reality, how do they come together, and what are the connections that you find there?
I think it's worth recognizing that India is, even at 75 years old, a relatively new country, but certainly the oldest surviving civilization in the world. And there's a huge amount of wealth that we as Indians carry with us. Now, the Sanskrit word for India is Bharat. And I'm not sure if many people know this, but the meaning of Bharat is very interesting. It comes from the root Bhaya Ratam Iti Bharatam, which means one. Bhaya, Bha means light. One who pursues light is a Bharatiya. Light in this case is knowledge, it's wisdom, it's personal enlightenment, and so on. And a society that's built on this foundation is a rich society. A rich society, certainly financially, as India has been for thousands of years of its existence, but also a wealthy society culturally. Now, the good news is that the concept of being a Bharatiya, being one who pursues light, is not limited by geography. It's certainly something that any and every Bharatiya can take with them wherever they are. And I think by the nature of the work that I've done, I've often been the only person in the room. I've been the only Indian in a room, certainly the only Indian in a boardroom, and now the only Indian with a man bun in a boardroom. And it brings us an opportunity to exercise that philosophical basis. What that means in today's world is that, certainly in the corporate space, the desire for profit, or the need for profit, and survival, frankly, needs to be balanced with impact. Because no business, no enterprise that negatively impacts society and the world at large can survive in the long term. And how we come to that place of personal impact is dependent on where our consciousness lies. And so elevating our consciousness as humans is potentially the most important endeavor that any educational system can undertake, whether during formal schooling or after. And to the extent that I've been able to influence it, getting this expansive and inclusive consciousness into spaces where it didn't previously exist has been incredibly important. This isn't talking about the Bhagavad Gita in a boardroom. This is about taking the reality of the Black Lives Matter movement following the brutal murder of George Floyd in the US and bringing it to life for a 2020 bank that's shut down in the UK. It's about creating a society that values everyone for who they are rather than elements of what is human and what is not human, which frankly for much of the 20th century was the reality in which we lived. And I feel like even more so as AI starts to proliferate, we need to have a strong conception of what it is to be human. And I feel very few cultures and very few philosophies answer that as powerfully and as impactfully as Indian culture has. Because cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, is not an Indian word. In India we say, I am because I exist. I am because I have consciousness. And having consciousness allows us to extend that consciousness to all beings living and all things existing. Which means that it gives us a blueprint for a society that can survive the vicissitudes of lack of inclusion and the challenges of carbon that we see today. So bringing that to life, certainly at the largest commercial bank in the UK, has been helpful, but certainly it also gives us a platform to then multiply it with the British government, with the current Prime Minister of the UK, and as a result, with the rest of the world.
Thank you so much, Om. Ushma, you have worked a lot with startups, and you have also kind of mastered the skills of mentoring kind of new startup people, and now you have a special mentoring challenge also with having your own child. Can you kind of open up to us that how do you see, because in whether we're talking about small children or we're talking about startups, there is somehow the question that how do you steer in a kindful way, that how your experiences with startups, what they have taught to you, and how do you see it's possible to happen?
Thank you for that question. It's a very interesting question because I often think about the synergy between my home life and my work life. And I think a lot of the things we've seen today, a lot of these very impressive young people who've exhibited their ideas are a clear demonstration of how education in the formative years can have a lasting impact on a global level. Because I truly believe that some of the young people and some of the students in this room today are going to change the world with their ideas. It's fantastic watching them. So I think some of the things that I've learned that are important, it's important to have what I think of as a growth mindset. And by that, I mean the belief that you can cultivate abilities, you can cultivate skills through learning, practice, and hard work. And I think embracing that mindset allows you to see failures as opportunities for learning. It allows you to be resilient in the face of setbacks. And that's something that I really want to pass on to my child, because this is something that's important whether you're a young company or whether you're a young child. And look, for me as a parent, I have a clear sense of purpose. I want to raise a confident, curious child who's comfortable in his own skin and who contributes positively to his community. And I've noticed that many young founders that I've met have the same kind of sense of purpose. They truly want to align their passions with meaningful work and sort of channel that into impactful products and impactful solutions. And I think that is what's going to change the world and make it a better place.
Thank you very much. I would love to kind of talk with all of you, hear your stories for much, much longer time, but unfortunately we can have to limit our discussion. But definitely I would like to hear from all of you still the question that, as we've been seeing today, an amazing group of young students telling their stories either through art or science, new innovations. What are the emotions that raises in you? Being an alumni of this school, we've seen students from many other IB schools, but what do you feel when you kind of listen and hear those excellent presentations?
We weren't this smart when we were teenagers. That's the honest emotion. You feel hope, you feel optimism. I think the human mind has gotten a lot more intelligent, and I also feel information is a lot more out there. We're talking about technology, from the start of this event, you really see the impact of technology within these minds. You feel a lot of hope as Indians, and you kind of also know that all these kids who spoke this way, building all these products and services, this is going to be the future of the world. So it's very, very inspiring. It keeps you going. Like for me, I took some entrepreneurial inspiration from today, but also a little bit of an inferiority complex. So that's the emotion.
Thank you. Om.
Well, I mean, to be Indian today is a privilege. And I don't think it's always been that way, because I don't think the world has always looked at India, certainly in the last 100 to 200 years, with the eyes with which we are looking at the country today. And certainly when I was growing up, there was this idea that the nail that sticks out must be hammered back in. And I feel like we have a lot of very helpful nails that are sticking out today, certainly in the presentations that we've seen, that don't accept the status quo as is, but want to positively challenge and make a difference. And I think, inspiration isn't age specific. So certainly I'm leaving today being incredibly inspired, not just at the initiative and drive of these young individuals, but certainly what they represent to our country. And my advice to them would be just keep going.
Thank you very much. Ushma.
So look, I think we live in a really difficult world, and sometimes the magnitude of the challenges that face us, whether it's, climate change, resource management, inequality, can seem so overwhelming. And I think what today has sort of demonstrated is how important it is to embrace hope and optimism, and how hope can drive real change. And I think what we've seen today has also demonstrated that it's not enough to just hope. This hope needs to be channeled into concrete action through hard work, through minute attention to detail, through resilience in the face of any kind of challenge. It's not enough to just have a big dream. You have to wake up every day to make that dream a reality. And I think that's what these young people understand so well. Look, all of us in this room today have access to resources and opportunities that are huge, that most people could only dream about. And all of us have chosen to be here today to collaborate, to build on each other's strengths, to try and effect real change. And to me, that's magical. And it gives me so much hope for a better future.
Thank you. Sukriti.
I don't really have much to add to that. That was very well said. And, I loved all the student presentations. And I also loved seeing how much into the future these kids are looking. And, I'd just say that those of us on stage, we've been in those shoes. And, we've gone to good universities. Within our friend circle, we've really gone to all the best universities you can think of, Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard and Yale and Princeton and all of it. And yet, when I look at my life today, my strongest community is still this school and the Dhirubai Ambani community. So many of us have gotten married to each other, which sounds incestuous, but lots of marriages in our class, and lots of really strong friendships. Lots of us are working together as business partners. And so, just to my Dhirubai Ambani kids and all the other kids as well in all your schools, from all your schools, you are in the coolest school, in the coolest city, in the biggest country in the world. And that's very hopeful.
Thank you so much. There's the saying that the apple can't fall very far from the tree. And I think that's often kind of referred to parents. But I think to a certain extent it can be also kind of referred to school. Because you have kind of chosen very different areas of life where you're working. And still I found a lot of common ground in the story that you're all telling and the way that you have chosen to make a difference in the world. So thank you very much for sharing your stories with us. Thank you.